Welcome to Successful Parenting, where we, Jackie Rue and Robin Choquette, share practical skills for families to build resilience and healthy connections. As practicing professionals and parents ourselves, we hope this podcast is a resource for parents to grow, reflect, and learn more about themselves and their children. Our approach is simple, tangible, and most importantly, we lead with compassion for the integrity of the families we serve. This podcast should not be taken as medical advice and is intended for informational purposes only. We love our work and we can't wait to watch families gain confidence and open themselves up to new ways of successful parenting. Good morning, Jackie.
Good morning, Robin.
How are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm looking forward to the weekend. We have a family wedding that we are attending in Indiana, and it's going to be probably one of the first times we're all going to be together.
Yeah.
We're coming from all over.
Exciting.
Yes.
Yeah, we have a weekend full of soccer, and there's something else we're doing this weekend, but I can't remember exactly. Oh, I wanted to tell you this great story, Jackie. I think it's so fitting with our guest today. So one of my granddaughters, she plays soccer. She's 9 years old. And so, at that age, Jackie, your girls played sports and you get so many just different levels of development, physical, understanding the game, all of that going on on the field at one time, right? It's so different from each and every player.
Well, and I think my backyard is a soccer field.
Right. So
And,
you get
and
to
we have the kids games out there. I was actually laughing. We had like a little rainstorm last night, and they kept those kids out there
yeah.
running through it.
It's lightning's the only thing that pulls those kids off. So
Yes.
yeah. So it was a game that was, the kids are just playing, and there's one little girl that you can see that her soccer IQ is kind of, I think, the way, and Roni can help me if I explain this a little bit later, but her soccer IQ, I don't think was really high, especially appropriate for her age. Because at that age, 9-year-olds, they get the sense of ball and self, but you're starting to see that it's not just ball. They start to recognize, and you want them to start recognizing at that time, other players. And in particular, what you want them, if their teammate has the ball, for them to trust their teammate and move away. So that opens the field and you get passing and all of that. But this little girl, she was a very strong, physical little girl. And I think her coach had often relied on her to just take the ball and run. And she was just kind of one of those type of players where she was pretty effective at what she was doing. So long story short, she's running down the field. She collides with another player, and the coach is really frustrated. You can tell the coach is getting frustrated. He's yelling more at the players. And this was the opposing team. And this happened the little girl goes down. The ref goes over to her, and like her arm or something was hurting her, and she was crying.
Oh.
And the ref looks over to the coach and says, you can come onto the field, because they motion when they can come onto the field. No lie. The coach was like, her feet are fine. She can walk over here. I was like, oh my gosh. My grandson was next to me and he looked at me, and the ref looked at his other ref and was like, did you hear that, coach? And he helped the little girl up the ref, and he was so good. But you could see how this coach was just so frustrated with this little girl. It was just unbelievable. And we see this all the time in sports with the kids. And I just thought it was so appropriate given today we have Roni Andrew on as our guest. And Roni works a lot of different places in the world of soccer. In particular, she really works with younger kids. And I think our conversation today is just going to be really, really wonderful. Roni, I've met her a couple years ago, Jackie, and I will say she is not shy to jump into the conversation every time I've been on a virtual event with her. She always jumps in, and I always leave that event either learning something new, getting a better understanding of something that I may have already known, or really reflection of myself through what Ronnie says. So she's definitely the type of person when she opens her mouth, like you want to listen, you want to be able to hear what she's saying. So I'm going to say, listeners, sit back, get relaxed, because this is going to be a good conversation.
What I love, Robin, is about this topic today, it's not just about soccer. I see parallel, we work with kids with soccer and basketball and gymnastics and all kinds of sports. So I think even though, Ronnie does a lot with soccer, I think a lot of the concepts and principles that we're going to talk about today really apply to youth in sports as a whole. And I know so often much of what we talk about is how do we help our children in sports, in the sports world, gain confidence and resiliency. And so often the adults' responses, as you shared, has so much to do with that. Ronnie, how are you doing today?
I am doing okay. I am doing okay, ladies. Thanks for the fine intro. Wow.
Ronnie, tell us a little bit about your background and what you do in the world of youth sports.
Well, first of all, family is my jam first. I have been married for going on 34 years now. A wonderful guy. And we have two kids who are hitting their 30s now. That they have supported all that I do. None of them play soccer. They dabbled in it a little bit. I am the outlier. I was a stay-at-home mom and did all the volunteering things and worked every random weird little job, from quilt shops and wool shops to baristas to orthodontic labs and all of those things. One day I was invited to play soccer. I was not a sport person. Randomly, this friend of mine says, she should come and play with us. And I'm like, nah, not really. And then she dared me. And of course,
Mhm.
That's all it
yeah,
takes, right?
that's all it takes. I dare you to do this, and I'm off running. So I took her on. It stuck. The sport was fantastic. And what the sport did for me in confidence levels and all that, this is at age 40, mind you, ladies. What that did for me, I wanted to pass that on to everybody I knew, whether it was an adult or right down to kids. And my background was kind of like teaching. My mom likes to tell me I wanted to be a teacher when I went to university, and I got there, and that was it just was not the right fit for me. So I left that idea behind. But my mom likes to remind me that ever since I left that behind, everything I've ever done has been in a teaching capacity. And I said, but yeah, mom, I'm not taking a kid and bringing them from year to year to year with that responsibility. I teach in basically life. That soccer thing hit me, and I'm like, I can work with kids. And it started out a couple hours a week helping a guy out. I swore I'd never coach. I swore I'd never ref. I swore I'd never do all of these things, and I've done all of that and more over the years. And I'm on year 17 going on 18 now with soccer. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Well, you like us wear many hats, right? I mean, it
Mm.
sounds like that's one thing. We come at it from the mental health perspective. We work with a lot of athletes, a lot of parents of athletes and children. What do you like about, being in so many different arenas and areas?
Well, focus has never been a real strong suit for me. I used to always think of the many hats and the shuffle from one thing to the next as like a weakness. But as I get older and reflect back on all of it, I found that I've taken a piece of every little thing that I've done and put it in the puzzle that makes me up today. I've taken away something important from every little thing that I've done. So it reminds me that I'm more than just a mom. I'm more than just a wife. I'm more than just a soccer coach. That you can kind of navigate through time and space and do all the things. You don't have to be a thing and be labeled as a thing. So I think it afforded me just so much variety, and I thrive on variety. And then it just gave me tools and skills. If I paid attention, it gave me tools and skills to take to the next thing, to the next thing. So that's what makes all of that so cool.
You're part of the WYSA, you're part of USYS, you're part of the YMCA. What are the different roles do you play?
With WYSA, that's the Wisconsin State Association for Soccer. They're the governing body in the state. I run the top soccer program through them. I have my own local programs that I'm on field and I coach with. It's an adaptive sport program, much like Special Olympics, but it's more inclusive, where it finds a place for any kid to play versus maybe the high functioning kids or kids that can walk and run and move. We find a way to adapt soccer so that any child can play that game.
Oh,
And then
great.
at the USYS, that's the United States Youth Soccer, that's the national level. I'm the Midwest representative for that program at that level. And they sit at the table with US Soccer so that this program is a national program coordinating across the United States with other folks who are doing the same thing. So that's my role there. My role at the YMCA meshes with that, where I just took on this role this last year. I'm semi-retiring from the soccer stuff. I was a club director for rec and grassroots programs for a long time, 17 years, and I decided that I wanted to focus on this adaptive sport. So now with the YMCA, I work on a team of people who are opening up opportunities in other sports recreationally, in the gym, fitness, health, wellness, whether it's mental health, emotional health, physical health, all of these things for kids that have special needs, that have disabilities, whether they're cognitive or physical or emotional. We're there to open up that space, make it easier for them to navigate in the world and bring acceptance to what they're going through and make awareness of what they're going through and how their difficulties might not be so different than difficulties that typical abled people have as well. So that's my space at the YMCA.
Okay. Is that something our listeners, because we have listeners from all across the US, do most YMCAs have the program, or do you just have to check out your local YMCA to find out?
You kind of have to check out your local, but if you connect to me, I can connect you to people who are doing bigger things than what we're even doing in Milwaukee. Milwaukee's just getting kind of started in this. It's something that has been on the fringe and it's part of the YMCA philosophy, period. But this is more of a focused effort to really bring it to the forefront. And there are YMCAs that are doing absolutely amazing things. Right now, I'm in a cohort that is working with an adaptive gym out of Boston that is helping all of us get more adaptive space opened up in YMCAs as they do revamps on older buildings and things like that. So it's really just right now, it's a connect to somebody who can connect you sort of thing. But I think it's just going to be bigger over the years. It's just going to be bigger.
Okay.
Well, and I think it's interesting. I think a lot of people are really trying to take a look at how we kind of help mentor. And I think, little kids are so impressionable. And one thing I notice even in my backyard hearing these soccer games is so often I hear, these adults like screaming at these kids,
Yes.
and even sometimes it can get pretty nasty, I'll be honest. And I'll look back and I'll see these like 7-year-olds running around and I'll hear every once in a while an adult like, you suck,
I
you know,
know.
and I'm like, you guys are 7. Like, it's supposed to
Oh,
be fun. And I know you work a lot with the littles, which is an age where fun development is so crucial. And unfortunately, I do think sometimes the adults can take a little bit of the fun out of that and not meaning to, but just getting really wrapped up in the game.
oh,
So
for
I know
sure.
littles are fun. Yeah. Do you see that too?
Oh, all the time. I think it's sometimes frustrating, especially as a director, because you get into that educational piece where you're there for the kids, but you're there for the parents as well. And you're trying to teach parents how to really make it more fun for the kids. You enroll your kids in a sport, especially at the younger ages, so that they get social time with their friends, they get play time, they get
Right.
exercise and all of those things. Then as soon as the whistle blows, there's a switch that flips for a lot of adults that they just go into competitive mode and all they can think of is, like the game they were watching, on Saturday afternoon in the armchair. They take that enthusiasm, if you will, to the kids' game. They're not really fully aware of what they're doing all the time. You point it out to them and they get embarrassed and they're like, oh, yeah, I guess I did do that. But I think a lot of parents are being more and more made aware of this.
Hmm.
So they know, but the knowing and the actually doing it on the sidelines is really, really, really hard. I'll admit when I first started coaching, I was a joysticking coach because nobody knew any better. But
Hmm.
as things are coming out, as education is coming out for coaches, even teachers in school, I take a lot of my cues from educators and how to let kids be on the field, let them make mistakes, let them fail, let them struggle. As long as they're not in danger, they're going to get more out of that than they will if you're telling them what moves to make on the field, telling them when to pass, when to dribble, when to shoot, all those things. Besides that, when you're doing that on the field, they don't hear you. They might hear the parent. They don't hear the coach. They block everything. They basically hearing their friends, and all they want to do is score the goal. That's what's in a little kid's head,
Yeah.
7, 8 years old, maybe tops. Like you said, at that 9-year old, they're starting to recognize they have teammates. They'll listen to teammates. But still, those adults, if they're hearing the adults, they actually stop on the field and listen to the adult, and all the play just goes right past them, and everything that you wanted them to do is already past them. So there's no point to it, but it's hard. It's a reaction. It's what our culture is used to, and I think it's hard to break those cultural norms to be that guy that's just quiet on the sideline. And I have, over my years of coaching and learning how to coach, I backed way off where I teach the kids during their sessions. And when I take a group of kids to a game, or I have a group of kids scrimmaging, I let them play. Every once in a while, I'll stop the play. I'll explain a few things. I'll let them go more. And then we're talking to kids on sidelines instead of the kids who are out playing on the field. And that's the best way to approach it.
Oh,
Yeah.
and that's so awesome. And you just made me kind of reflect. My daughter was a softball catcher for a long time, my older one, and it was tough. And if you know much about softball, being a catcher, you know that puts you in a spot where you get that parent that wants to be right there
Oh, they're
or
standing up
we're
against the
standing right
fence.
there saying stuff to
Yeah.
them, and you're like, that's not helpful, right? And it's usually not. Sometimes it's the child's parent, but usually, and it's not always the nicest comments.
Hmm.
So it's interesting. But it's because you do work with littles, what would you say to parents is the most important thing to remember, when you are kind of helping a younger child in sports, or even helping them gain confidence? Because really at that age, it's really about confidence and, helping them develop that ability to kind of take those risks.
It is. And I think one thing that I always encourage parents is hit the pause button and sit. If you see something, like especially with my little guys, we don't do a lot of games. And if we do, they're more scrimmage type games, because they don't need to be playing for scores and all of that stuff at those early ages. They just need to play to experience the game, and listening to a coach and those things, and not listening to parents. So to help the kids gain their independence, I always tell parents that the best thing you can do is hit that pause button when you want to jump up on the field and go join them. Because when you jump up and try to help them on the field, and you get parents that do that. I probably did it when my kids were little like that too. You see your kids struggling, or they need a shoe, even if they're not struggling, they need a shoe tied or the nose wiped or whatever. Let it be on the field. Don't jump up on the field, because what you're doing when your child trusts you, your child that by that age has learned how to trust you, you're feeding them, you're taking care of them, you're keeping them safe, all of those things. They look to you for that trust. If you're jumping out on the field, even if your words are saying, you can do this, you got this, you're rushing to help them, and they're silently telling them, I don't think you can do this. You need my help. So it's so important, just in that 1 hour that they're with a coach or with trainers or whoever is doing that. If you're in a good club, hopefully your trainers are working towards that. But to pause that reaction of wanting to jump out there and help them, and let them be out there for that hour. If they cry and they don't want to be out there, let the coach handle that. We have got ways of helping them integrate. If they don't want to integrate and they're just standing on the field crying, that's okay. They
Right.
do not have to play. I have one little girl who used to come out. Oh my gosh, she came out on the field, and she would cry from the minute she walked out on the field to the minute she left, but she played the whole time. And she is now looking at D1 colleges, and she's a phenomenal player. They're not going to be ruined by you not jumping out there and comforting them and making that whole situation easier for them. It's
Right.
really okay to let them be in that scary, sad space, because that scary, sad space is going to help them learn how to deal with bigger, scarier things later on. It's just a start. And the thing is, they're not in danger when they're out there. They've got to, I mean, if the coach is watching, they're not going to get hit by balls. Their coach is going to pull them off to the side. They're going to
Right.
be fine. They're sad. They're scared. They're going to be fine. That's what the coach is there for. And then that gives that child that they did that hour. Oh my gosh, they'll come back the next time. It's literally, sometimes it's 1 or 2 sessions. And by 2 sessions in, they're a different
Yeah.
child.
Yeah, we find that to be so true, Ronnie, with the families we've worked with. We will tell the parents, if you will let your child experience it, you will find that they will overcome it. But when you interject so often, you break that. And as you said, it really enables them to find that confidence, find that resiliency, and really do what they need to do. I've got a similar story. My daughter, her first year of soccer, touched the ball twice, and that was only in the second season. Was when the ball rolled and hit her. Ended up a D1,
Yeah.
folks, a full ride scholarship this child
Yeah.
had, and is doing amazing things now in the world of soccer. So you just never know. And I think your story is so on, and I can back that up with our own personal experiences. Jackie and I talk about this a lot, of failure and allowing your child to experience. It's hard. We laugh about our own experiences, and we know we've jumped in. You say to take a pause. What else would you say, parents, that could really help them to take that pause? I know for me, when I'm on the sidelines watching, I don't get next to the person who talks a lot. I try to position myself on the field where I can just watch the game, and I've put gum in my mouth. I've done all kinds of things so that I'm not doing a lot of talking. What would you say?
I always laugh at the lollipop trick because it does work, because you have something physical reminder. I think for myself, this is going to sound a little strange, but a lot of times I'll carry a rock or a pebble in my pocket. It's something physical touch point that I know that's there to remind me, like if I want to shout out, if I want to come back at somebody, I got this touch point that reminds me, no, hit that pause button. And it's really super hard. It's a practice. You're going to make your own mistakes getting there, and the more you do it, the easier it gets. And so that's one thing that I'll tell parents. And I like your idea of kind of observing your sideline and finding out, who are your people. Sometimes it's sitting by friends where you're totally distracted by a conversation that you're not even watching the game, and then your kid's yelling at you, did you see my goal? And you have to make up a story and go, yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Because you're distracted by your friends on the blanket. As much as you're there to watch your kids play, it's your time too. And you don't have to give up everything to go and be watching that game from, minute of the whistle blow to minute of the game ending. You have time to spend for yourself. So bring a book, read a book. If you're that person, set it aside, read a book. I have one dad, this is great. This guy was a really intense dad, and he was always pushing his little kids. And one day I saw him on the sidelines way far back from the field, and he was knitting. And if you met the guy, you would have been floored by it, because there's no way you would have ever pictured this guy with yarn and needles in his hand. This is not that guy. He was knitting, and he said, I had to do something that totally distracted me. And I learned how to do this when I was in college, when I was working at a 24-hour Walgreens. We goofed around and we taught ourselves how to knit. And he goes, it stuck with me, and this is what I have to do. So
I love
just
it.
distractions for yourself, and be that weird guy on the sideline. It's really okay. And then parents will follow your example, like
Right.
you're setting a better example for the screamers that are still there. And will you have screamers? They're always going to be there. It's just
Well, and I love, Ronnie, what you've said, and I think it's important too. I'm seeing a shift where we're really starting to kind of teach parents more about this, right? Because I don't know that there's always a handbook for parenting, and we've all made the mistakes and things. Sometimes while we think we're building our children up, so often we're not. We're tearing them down, and I think I was just talking to a mom this morning, and she said, I don't put a lot of pressure on myself. But then when I was talking to her, she was really comparing her child to other children. And I think it does become this competitive thing. And one thing I noticed, my children started playing sports when they were younger. And so they were like 5 and 6 years old, right? And my kids were not naturally just the most talented sports athletes out there. And there were other children that were really they just like showed up, and it just looked amazing when they were 7. And those parents were like, look at me and my little D1 future athlete. And my kids really had to kind of hustle and work for everything, because it didn't come naturally. And one thing I noticed is, as those kids that really didn't have to work for it got older, they really had a hard time, where my children kind of developed that work ethic that as they got older, it became easier for them because things just happen. And I always warn parents to be mindful of not saying things like, "Oh, my child's going to go to D1," or "My child's going to do this," or
Right.
because, children really do get burnt out on sports if they start to feel too much pressure, and that it's become more about something than having fun at a younger age. What Talk a little bit about what you're seeing in the world of youth sports.
That's totally spot on. I see there are kids that I've had that started at 3 that are going to college now, and they're playing ball in college. Some of them scholarship. I have one girl who's now that I've had contact with and has been part of my programs when she was younger. I wasn't coaching at the time. I was more of an assistant coach, but she's playing professionally now, which is so cool. And
Right.
there are those kids. Looking back, I look at the environment that those families had put their kids in. They gave their kids a lot of autonomy in the game. The game belonged to that child all the way through the process. The parents were there to support them, but they weren't there arranging everything for them. Those kids really worked to get where they were at and where they are. The parents who are pushing the kids, I mean, I've seen literally fights on the field where that kid puts up the wall and just wants to tell the parent, just shut up. It's and worse. I mean, we're talking like out and out verbal fights between a father and a son. I've seen it because the dad is just push, 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 push. I've seen the kid with, mental health issues because the parents are there filming the kid's games and putting pressure on the kid when he's 10. Some things that parents do, there's some really crazy parents out there, but there's really amazing ones out there. And then there's the ones in the middle in that gray area that are still trying to figure it out. And I just remind parents that every kid is who they are. Each one is so individual. I mean, if you've got more than one kid in your family, you're seeing it right in your house. And you have to meet those kids where they're at each and every single day. You can't predict the future for them. You can't hold their past against them. You have to meet them where they are that day and kind of navigate things. It's not saying that you can't have plans for your kids, you can't have dreams for your kids and visions for your kids. You can't make your visions and dreams theirs either. I look at my kids and neither of them are doing the things that, oh, I would really want my child to do this. I look at them now and they're both very successful adults, but the way they got there, my husband and I just had this conversation the other night. The way they got there was infuriating some days, but we had to let them go and do it the way they did. I can't regret any of what they did, what we did, the things that we went through. There was a lot of struggles. I encourage parents to just observe your kids. I'm not saying that you can't be there to not give them structure, that they need all of those boundaries and those things. And you have to teach them how to set their own boundaries though, versus setting those boundaries for them, because it's all those skills that are going to help them out later when they are looking at those colleges, when they are not getting the acceptance letters that they were looking for, and all those things that they see as failures are happening. They're just more obstacles and steps that you have to go around, kind of directing your path to where you really need to go. So if the kids are learning those skills at the early ages, amazing things happen when they're at the older ages. If
Right.
you're doing that all for them when they're young, I know a guy walking around with a yellow notepad thinking he's doing great things and can't make a decision for himself to save his soul, and he's 35. So I think just letting them experience those things is so important.
Right, right. And it's so true because as they get older and the higher level that they get, you look around and everyone is physically, athletically gifted in a very similar way. What you find, right, Aunt Ronnie, is when we get to more that elite level, those are the people who have the mental skills, the emotional regulation, all of those things that you need to be able to manage that pressure. Jackie and I, when we're talking to parents, this is what we really try to encourage them to think about is you want that developed and you can be a part of helping develop that for
Yes.
your child. If you really love the game and you really want to be a part of helping your child, help your child in that way versus giving them instructions,
Yeah.
versus telling them what to do. And you used earlier the term joystick coaching. And can you explain that to our listeners?
Sure, it takes me right back to Atari. That's my gen. But it's walking them through things, giving them the instruction, giving them like the step by step by step by step. And it not necessarily even just in a soccer game. A soccer game, it's like shoot the ball, pass the ball, giving them the instruction as things are happening out on the field. That's joysticking and coaching. And joysticking when you're with your kids, I mean, it's like literally don't eat those, don't eat that, eat this instead. Giving them all of these step by step by step and not letting them make their own choices.
Mhm.
Making decisions is so important. Problem solving, letting them run up into an obstacle and not giving them the answer. Let them choose. When I'm coaching kids, I'm not giving them instructions. I'm asking them questions and letting them come up with the instructions,
Oh, I
because a
love
lot
it.
of those kids know the answers. They don't need you telling them what the answers are. Kids have been around so much sports. Our culture is a sports culture. You know, even if they've never played the game before, they've watched mom and dad on the couch shouting at a TV at a football game, you know, whatever. They know what kind of happens in sports. They don't need you to tell them exactly what to do when they're on the soccer field. I ask them the questions. I let them give me the answers, and then it sticks more. I mean, they remember from week to week. If I'm telling them something and ask them this, do you remember what I told you last week? They won't remember it. But if I ask them to tell me the answer, like, what do you do when you have the ball here? What would you do if this situation? They will be able to answer that question right on the spot. And then I'll ask them the next week, they'll be able to answer it again, same way. Or the situation might be different, and then they give me a different answer because the solution is a little bit different. But that's how those kids own that game versus the parents owning the game and telling the kids what to do or how to dribble or exactly how to. There's skills that they need to have on the soccer field. There's skills that kids need to have in life, but there's a scope to that. You don't have to necessarily do it exactly this way, because if every kid did that, it'd be boring. It'd be boring to watch the game. It'd be boring for
Right.
them.
Ronnie, I absolutely love this conversation and we could go on, but I know we need to wrap it up. I know you're heading out of town. We have some questions that we ask every guest,
Okay.
and you can pick from, you can take one, you can take two, you can take three. Our
Okay.
first one is tell us about a funny parenting story. The other one is what TV, family, or movie you would want to be a part of and why.
Okay.
And then the third is what does successful parenting mean to you?
Okay, so the first one, I'm gonna say my kids are so old. I don't remember. I even asked my daughter, and I were talking the other day. I was trying to figure out some, just goofy things that have happened over the years, and just we were talking about this, and I couldn't come up with anything. But I'm just focused forward more than past probably. But as far as TV family, I'm gonna go Adam's Family. Totally Adam's Family. Because they're just so out there, and each one is an individual, but they come together and it makes like this weird quirky team. But they're so out there and they just don't care. They don't care that they're weird. They don't care that they're different than everybody else. They just are the Adams Family.
And they make it work, right?
Right? And Morticia and Gomez, who wouldn't want to be married like that? I mean, my gosh. Husband doting on me like that. That'd be all right. Um, but yeah, Adam's Family. And then what successful parenting means to me, I would say, going to bed every night, head hitting the pillow, realizing I did the best I could with the tools that I had that day, knowing that's where we are and we're just going to do it again the next day and the next day. And even with my kids out of the house, off on their own, one of them's married, has a small farm. The other one is just living her best life, playing tuba and trombone and going to work every day. Just knowing that they're successful and happy and I'm there for them. I'm still parent, but it looks a lot different than it did when they were 3, 7, 8, whatever. But every day, I have the next day to look forward to, if I'm blessed as such. And I'm ready for that next day to tackle whatever comes up. And that to me is what it is. Just hitting the pillow with peace at night to be able to go into the next day and do it again.
Excellent. I love it. Thank you so much, Ronnie.
You're welcome. This was really fun.
Thank you too, and I hope all is going well. And you know what, Robin and I always joke, we wish we had this knowledge when our children were young.
Right?
Because
Yes.
I
Yes.
reflect like I
Oh.
would be such a better parent right now.
Oh,
Yes.
totally. I'm like, sometimes I wonder how my kids got to be such wonderful adults, because we did not have any of this at all. And I'm going to share with you guys, I'm actually becoming more and more of a helper and a caretaker with my parents now as they get older. And I compare sometimes, and I don't know if compare is the right word, but I kind of look back and go, all the things that they went through, I'm still here, live and tell about it, to go back and take care of them. I'm hoping for that same thing for my kids. And it's just perpetually, it just goes on. So just my advice to parents is, you got to go and work with what you got and what you know. And if it gets better in the future, boy, that's great for your own kids, because you got what you got now, and you got to do the best with it that you can.
Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you so much. And I hope
Yeah.
you have a great weekend. It's, fall is such a beautiful time of year, and I just hope we all get to get out and see some changing leaves.
Ooh, I
Yeah.
am going to Cincinnati for a top soccer. It's the biggest festival for this program. There's 300 athletes. I get to play and work with the athletes. It's going to be fantastic. You got to check out social media. It'll be all over social media.
We will
Oh,
do. Thank you, listeners. Thanks, Jackie.
we will see you soon.
Thanks,
Bye.
ladies.
Bye. Thank you for joining us, and make sure to subscribe and like us to catch our next episode, where we will take you on a journey to find new ways of successful parenting.